I know I can't stand him either. Coming up at 7 p.m. on Highbrow Radio, Dr. Lucy Worsley spends 28 hours inside Berghain, Berlin's iconic nightclub, and gives us her impressions of the place. And after that at 8, actor Morgan Freeman takes a deep dive into the world of porcine-themed confectionery as he goes in search of Percy Pig. And at 9, Dr. Matthew Sweet takes a ride on Europe's longest water slide in Tenerife. But now it's time for Park Date, where, in each episode, a celebrity is kidnapped and forced to participate in an interview in a park against their will in order to barter for their freedom. It's 2023. Welcome to a new season of Park Date, Season 3. Thank you for listening. For this season, we will have 8 episodes. They will be coming every other week this time. So the next one will be in 2 weeks' time, and then 2 weeks' time after that. If you like Park Date, please do like, subscribe. Please leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. And the best review, as I always say, will win a prize. So make sure you leave some funny ones. For the first episode of this season, we have a great musician and a great guy. His brother, Shea, is in Gorillaz, and the two of them have written a graphic short story together. His son, Ravi, has made a charity single. Check out ravisdream.com with help from people like Bastille, Coldplay, and Mary Berry. And of course, the person I've spoken to for this episode is a DJ, a musician, and most famously a member of the very brilliant Metronomy. It is, of course, Gbenga Adelekan. So do enjoy this episode, which comes live from central London. Well, it's not live, obviously. We recorded it. That's a lie. But yeah, I hope you enjoy it and enjoy the rest of the season too. And remember, this is a show about chat and comedy. There are funny things at the end of every episode, so listen to the end, and you might enjoy the season trailers as well. We put a lot of effort into making those funny. Hope you laugh. Okay, welcome to St James's Park in London. I'm here with Gbenga Adelekan. Gbenga, how are you today?
I'm good, man, and compliments to you for pronouncing my name correctly. Thank you.
I got it right. So, we're in St James's Park, but we had a little bit of a delay to the start of this podcast. Do you want to tell everyone what we just experienced?
We took a trip back to the Imperial era. Yes. So we're near Buckingham Palace, and there was some kind of procession that involved a lot of horses and swords.
Yeah.
It's a bit unnerving as a person who's from one of the former colonies.
Yeah. People with swords on horses, and I've never seen anything like that before.
It was something to do with a visit from the South African president.
Yeah.
But he was nowhere to be seen.
No, we didn't see him, did we? We just saw there was a lot of people on horses. But we were looking at the guys playing music on their
there were
on their
people
horses.
on horses holding drums and all kinds of brass instruments, and I don't really understand how that works. I wish they'd been playing so I could see if it was actually possible. Maybe they were just carrying them to like whatever their next point is on this kind of procession.
Would you fancy doing a Metronomy show on a horseback?
On a horse?
Probably not.
I'm not really sure who in the band knows how to ride. It's not really something that comes up. I mean, I've
Joe ride?
I've ridden a horse once. Yeah. It was on a school trip to Sweden, like an exchange trip to Sweden. That was longer ago than I would like to divulge to your listeners. Yeah. I'll have to ask the guys. We're going away on tour next week, so maybe I'll ask who can ride.
Bring it up. How was your riding skills when you were in Sweden? I've never done it before. Is it hard?
It was a lot of fun, man. I think they gave me a horse that was very easy to kind of manage. We kind of went riding through the woods. It was lovely.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. Well, yeah, maybe that could be something for the future.
Hey, you can hear there's some
oh
music coming in the distance there.
That's the yes, exactly. It's like, well, I was saying to you, it's like walking into an episode of The Crown or something. It's got that
like
life.
Pathé newsreel kind of vibe to it as well.
Yeah, we just need someone with a very clipped English accent in the background narrating.
Some RP.
And here come the horses.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's take a stroll through St James's Park. You've come up here kindly, Gbenga, from Brighton today, where you guys are based now. And you said you're by Queen's Park in Brighton, aren't you? Do you like to go?
Right.
You like to hang out in Queen's Park when you're there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, I have 2 kids. They're not so small anymore, but when they were smaller, it's like come rain or shine, they're much like people who own dogs. Like, basically, you have to take them out for a run around at least once a day, or they go a bit crazy. The only difference is, like, my kids were usually not kind of going for wheeze on trees and stuff.
Yeah. Do you have to give them 2 cans of food per day as well?
That's the minimum, or social services get involved.
They'll get involved, exactly. And you have, well, let's talk about Ravi for a bit, because you have music running in your family. Ravi's got this musical urge already, hasn't he?
He does. Ravi has a benign brain tumor, and he had successful surgery on it about a year ago. And when we were coming up, we were talking about the anniversary of his surgery, and he wanted to do something positive to support a couple of charities that have supported us kind of in the past year. And he had this idea of singing A Million Dreams, and maybe my wife filming him singing it in Queen's Park, and us kind of putting it out there and asking people to donate to a fundraiser. And then we kind of thought, well, why don't we kind of record it properly? Because I have a recording setup at home. I know a little bit about making music and recording. And then we just have this amazing community of creative people who were suddenly like, oh, well, I could probably get word to so-and-so. And I have, maybe I can get some word to Hugh Jackman and see if he'll kind of pop up and do a little cameo, just kind of giving his support to the project. And we kind of got Coldplay and Mary Berry and Bastille and Paloma Faith and all kinds of people got involved. It was quite overwhelming, really.
Yeah, it must have been nice to see that reaction, to see people encouraged and encouraging. It's nice to have that help, isn't it? To see people helping out.
Yeah, and it's so the kind of core of the track is a kind of real family affair, because my older brother, Nee, he's a producer out in LA, he kind of produced the track, and my younger brother, Cher, who plays bass with Gorillaz, sang on it, and Cher's a really good guitar player as well, so he played guitars, and we got both sets of grandparents singing on it, and my wife Bethan sang on it, and Ravi's little sister sang on it, so
I didn't hear Bethan's voice on it, but that's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yep, everyone got involved.
Everyone's on it. And obviously having all those contributions makes it a real kind of it's got that sort of Live Aid vibe, hasn't it? Everyone's coming out for the same batting for the same team and trying to help this charity, and I think it's great, isn't it, to have that kind of collaborative.
Well, it's been really fun, I think, for Ravi so Ravi sings on it as well, and for him to see, he knows I'm a musician, he knows that I play bass on songs and sometimes produce songs myself, but I think actually having him be involved in the process of putting the song together gave him a real perspective on how many takes you need to sing something before you have the take that is good for the verse, and then the take that is good for the chorus, and just how much work, how many hours and hours of work can go into what ends up being kind of 3.5-4 minutes of music,
Yeah, lots and lots of time go into go into songs, don't they? Unlike this podcast where we just record it.
We chose the wrong medium. We should just have put out a podcast, and then we wouldn't have had to edit anything.
It's incredible though.
Oh wow, a seagull. Is that a seagull?
Yeah, it is exactly. Yeah, we're getting slightly attacked by seagulls.
I like it. It's a much more refined strain of seagull here in St James's Park. In Brighton,
oh, they take your chips, don't they? In Brighton,
yeah,
they've got no shame at
sandwiches, all sorts.
Have you ever had anything stolen by seagull?
So I've lived in Brighton for 10 years now, and it had never happened to me before this summer. And we were on the beach actually with my friend Oscar, who plays keyboards in Metronomy, kind of with our families. We were like on the beach. And yeah, like a seagull, like just swooped down and took my fish and chips.
No,
it's quite shocking when it happens. It's a real like whoop.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So yeah, you really need to be careful when you're in Brighton of the seagulls, don't you? How is Oscar? How's he doing? Is he okay?
Yeah. Well, Oscar. So when I first moved to Brighton, Oscar was like the only member of the band who still lived in Brighton.
Yeah.
And now he lives in California, kind of near San Francisco.
Does he?
So we're kind of the band is super spread out now.
Yeah.
So you go on tour, you meet people, and they happen to live in very inconveniently far away places. But love is love.
Yeah, and I guess using modern technology, I guess you can get around that, right? Kind of recording. Do you ever record remotely, or do you guys always get in the studio together?
Not so much. I mean, the way Metronomy albums tend to come together is, well, not tend to. The way they do come together is that Joe is always at the core of it, because Joe is a very, very talented musician and songwriter and producer. So he will play most of the instruments and then kind of pull us in for kind of adding bits and pieces to things. Apart from, there was an album called Love Letters that came out quite a few years ago now, where we recorded to tape, and so we needed kind of live takes. There wasn't really a lot of overdubbing that we could do. So that album was, pretty much like the sound of us playing in a room together.
Yeah.
But also I think like post-COVID, like everyone is a lot more set up for remote everything now,
Yeah, it's more of a thing, isn't it? But
hey, we found where those horses went.
Yeah, we found the horses, right? So there's a lot of men on horses.
I did spot the odd woman. They weren't all men, but yes, they were mostly men.
Yeah. I want to say, are they called the Household Cavalry? I might be wrong on that.
Well, I defer to your, as an Englishman, I defer to your knowledge on that one.
I could be completely wrong. I'm not sure if my...
there's a lot of flags.
My knowledge... Yeah, that's...
Jamaican flag.
Right, this is the flags of the Commonwealth, isn't it, I think?
You can see a Nigerian flag over there.
Nigerian flag,
you spotted that way ahead of me, but yes, you're right.
Yeah. So the Nigerian flag is the green and white and green
white,
one,
green.
isn't it?
That's right.
I may not know my military history, but I can tell my flags.
Peace and prosperity. That's what it signifies.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So it's all very quiet.
It is very quiet. Thankfully, because as soon as they start hitting those drums very hard, it's going to absolutely ruin what we're trying to record. So it's very, very polite of.
It's very nice of them.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Of them and the South African president to be nice and quiet while we're walking through St James's Park. But yeah, it feels very like the centre of kind of formal state Britain.
It's nice. I'm having a super touristy experience.
Yeah,
I never really hang out in this part of London very much.
Me neither. It's kind of strange, isn't it? We're having like a tourist day out. We'll have to do this again sometime. Bring Ravi and Beth in.
We'll record it on the top of an open top bus or something.
Yes, we'll do that next time. Exactly. But yeah, I think going back to what we were saying about Metronomy as well. It's funny because I was thinking. Gbenga, when I was on my way over today, about the times I've seen Metronomy. I've seen you guys a lot, and I think the record. It's interesting to talk about the recording stuff, but also Metronomy is a great live band, and so many people love you guys for the live shows. I mean, they're fantastic. Just trying to squeeze through some people here, but I think that's part of the experience, really, as well, isn't it? And when we were saying about Oscar, I do remember the first time I saw Metronomy was before you were a member. Long time ago.
You're an OG.
English Riviera days, when the guys used to have those flashing lights, on their chests. I remember seeing them at Rough Trade East. I loved Heartbreaker. That was always getting a lot of plays.
Yeah, up until very recently, it was still in the live set.
It was still in the live set, wasn't it? Yeah.
It's a lot of fun for me because it's got a really cool bass line.
It's got an amazing bass line. I was going to say, you must love playing that song, right?
Yeah, it's also, so when I had an audition, which I thought of as an audition. It turned out that it wasn't really an audition because
to get into the band.
Joe and Oscar had already basically decided that if they got on with me and I could play the songs, that I'd be in the band. And I think they thought that I was just coming to kind of feel them out as much as they were kind of checking if the vibe was good. But I was incredibly, incredibly nervous. And one of the things I was nervous about was like, what if they asked me to play, what if we play Heartbreaker? It's like that bass line is so difficult. Because on the recording, so Joe played the bass on that recording, but he played it once and he looped it. And this is like a classic Joe Mount thing to do, is he has a very unique musical brain, but sometimes he plays things that are quite tricky to play. And in the context of a kind of one-man band type thing, when you're producing a song, you can play something and then you can kind of chop it up and loop it, and then it comes time to play it live. It's like, a human being has to actually play this for 3.5 minutes. So that's always like it's a very fun challenge. And I think, going back to what you're saying about us as a live band, actually part of the fun of the band is reinterpreting those songs in a way that makes them kind of make sense when you're playing them live. And then now, because there have been a whole bunch of albums as well, it's also making an old song like Heartbreaker work with a kind of a new song like from the new album Small World. Kind of getting all those things to kind of sit next to each other in a set list and make sense is quite a fun challenge as well. Yeah,
it is, isn't it? And do you ever kind of reinterpret? I sometimes hear you guys almost playing like slightly different variations maybe on a song.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, even just stuff like changing keys to make a transition from one song to another song make sense. Or like a song, like there's a song on the album Metronomy Forever called Salted Caramel Ice Cream, and the recorded version is almost this kind of like Pet Shop Boys, like very, very synthy, no guitars, and we've turned it into, it almost sounds a bit like ZZ Top, kind of like 12-bar blues, but like real white boy 12-bar blues kind of thing, and that's, it's quite fun, I think. Surprising the fans with kind of different, it takes, if we play it, sometimes it takes people a little while to figure out which song it's going to be before the intro, before the vocal comes in. That's quite fun.
Yeah, and that must keep it fresh and interesting for you guys as well, right?
Oh, yeah,
kind
totally.
Of, introducing that kind of playful factor into the live performances.
I think generally working hard at stuff but not taking it too seriously is that's the whole MO for the Metronomy live show, where down to we always think about what our outfits are going to be for each touring cycle, and Oscar and Joe and our lighting designer will put a lot of thought into what the live show is going to look like. But equally, you don't want to overthink stuff, and you don't want to be too precious about stuff. And you want people to feel like they're free to dance like idiots, because we're on stage dancing like idiots too.
which is exactly what's going to happen half the time, because it is Metronomy as a band that you want to dance to. It's a good party vibe, isn't
Absolutely,
it? Always,
yeah.
always. And I guess that's one thing that you guys are kind of you always seem like you're having fun. The crowd's always having fun, and I think one of the things I was also thinking about with Metronomy, Gbenga, is like you guys are really cross borders, right? Like you are popular in a lot of different countries. And it's obviously music that really speaks to people in different places, isn't it?
It's one of the really fun things, I think, about... I think the dynamic of Metronomy has always been that we're signed to a French label.
Yes, huge in France.
So we had the same push in France as if we were a French act, and I think we also, right from the beginning, from before I joined, I think Joe quite liked the idea of putting a lot of work into, kind of playing as many shows as were offered in France, and going and playing festivals that were a little bit out of the way. We're kind of at a point where we can tour for a week and a half just playing in France, It's like, we feel very, very fortunate that way. But even, there's other countries like Mexico or Japan or lots of Eastern European countries. Like we played a show in Poland that was like one of our biggest kind of European shows. We feel very kind of fortunate about that. I think that kid wanted to get involved in the podcast there.
Thank you. I think they did, definitely. Maybe let's sit down for a while over here. I think that global thing's really, I think it's really, really interesting with you guys.
But it's like a function of, I don't know the best way to put this, piracy. Where like in the MySpace days, we'd play shows in Russia. Yeah. And there'd be like a lot of people at the show, and they'd all know the songs. Yeah. And then our manager would be like,
How do they know the songs?
The album's not even really like out in Russia. Like we don't have a label partner in Russia. Yeah. That's like, okay, they've all torrented this album, haven't they?
Makes me sad. In the BitTorrent days. Yeah. Yeah. I love when Joseph sings in French as well. Those French translations are always really really good.
Yeah, I mean, like he lived in France for a while, and I think he and we really love. Yeah, we love lots of French artists. I think especially when you're in that when you get into like electronic music and dance music and kind of electronic indie kind of crossovers
so much, isn't
and
there?
stuff.
Cassius, Phoenix, all those bands.
Like absolutely amazing history.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because you've got that kind of international space that Metronomy live in, but then there's also those kind of English references that come from. And you obviously spent a lot of time growing up in Nigeria, but then a lot of time in England as well.
Yep.
Joe in Torquay. You've got the Brighton thing. So there's that kind of like small, like suburban, like small town England that comes into those songs as well, isn't there? Those like small town references that kind of appeal as well.
Sorry, I'm laughing because that brass band with the soldiers in it is playing a Queen song. They're playing "Don't Stop Me," which is
Now.
like actually, so it's my son's favorite Queen song. That and like "We Will Rock You," because like all children love "We Will Rock You." It's just like so primal.
Do you know much about licensing? Am I going to have to pay a lot of money for that? That could be a problem. He loves that song, does he?
Yeah. So like when my son was little, the year he was born, I was home that year. It was kind of a mostly off year. And we'd hang out in the morning. Like I'd get him up and we'd sit and listen to, we'd listen to like whatever music I wanted to listen to, basically.
That's the best thing about having a kid, right? You can just like foist your music taste on there.
I think you have a myth that that's what you're going to do, that you're going to kind of, curate your child's music taste, and they're going to be like that kid at school who's not into Baby Shark or whatever.
Yeah.
But pretty soon, I think they realize how funny it is for them to be into music that you don't like, that like your parents don't like.
Yeah.
And also, even if your parents are listening to amazing music, you will go through a period where, as a kid, you want to listen to like the furthest thing away from what your parents are into, and then most people kind of come back around. They're like, oh, you know what, like ABBA actually aren't so bad. But yeah, Queen is one of those ones where I think kids, the kind of big Queen songs anyway, like it's kind of like the Beatles, such great music that I think it's really intelligible on a number of different levels. So you can be super muso and like into it on that level, but also like the melodies are so great, the grooves are so great that like you can be 3 years old and also be like super into it because it just kind of, it's very easy for you to listen to, you know.
Yeah, definitely. What other stuff does he like?
I mean, him and his sister are big Disney people, as are myself and my wife. So yeah, you know, the Encanto soundtrack was massive in our house. And, you know, so this song that he's done, I don't think I mentioned, the cover of A Million Dreams from The Greatest Showman. And so The Greatest Showman soundtrack is one that, yeah, we had a phase of, if we were in the car, it had to go on, and at least once a day we'd have to listen to it in the house.
Did you get in touch with Hugh Jackman about it in the end?
So what happened was, we had there's a friend of one of Ravi's school classmates who knew a production company that were doing some work with Michael Gracie, who's the director of The Greatest Showman, and Ravi wrote Michael Gracie a letter asking if he would film a short introduction for the video. And when Michael Gracie sent us his video, he didn't tell us, but that day he happened to be with Hugh Jackman. And so like at the end of his little introduction video, Hugh Jackman kind of pops up with a few words of like encouragement to Ravi.
Oh, that's great, isn't it?
So yeah, it was nice, just like very, very organic. And I think he liked the fact that Ravi had taken the time to write him a letter, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's quite old school. So it was kind of, it was nice. It was like a real kind of pleasant surprise for us. And the way the video's been edited, spoiler alert, the Hugh Jackman bit isn't till like the very, very end of the video. So it's also like a little Easter egg for the 0.5% of people who will actually watch a YouTube video all the way to the end. You know?
But it's the same with the podcast, yeah. I tell people how to win £1 million at the end of every episode. But no one ever listens, so they're never going to get it.
Yeah, there was a period in one of your rival podcasts, the Adam Buxton podcast, where he had a whole bunch of, he used to call people who made it to the end, the quartermasters.
Yeah.
Like the final quarter of a podcast, like hardly anyone listens to.
Yeah.
Or like, people listen to it, but they're already asleep by that point.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people do listen to a podcast before bed, don't they?
Totally. Like I find when I'm on tour, I was never really that into doing it because, you know, if you're sleeping with someone else in the room, it's kind of it's not very nice to be like, all right, well, on my side of the bed, I'm just going to like listen to this. It feels very kind of like you're shutting yourself off. But when I was on tour this last year, I like finally got into like putting on, I think also it's like Bluetooth speakers, I guess, Bluetooth headphones. You can just kind of put one in, and yeah, I got very into like listening to those long, like 4-hour history podcasts or whatever, and it's like, one day I'll get to the end of this. Yeah. It's going to take me a really long time.
A really long time, exactly. A few nights listening. But I love with you guys as well how you've really got music in the family, and I think there's something about music, isn't there? That maybe, I'm not sure if it's like a nurture nature thing. I don't know if it's something you have in the blood, or it's maybe, you know, if you're around music, then you sort of see how incredible and powerful and amazing and emotive music it is. Maybe, I'm not sure which one it is, but it does seem to run in families, doesn't it? Both my parents really loved music, and I think that's maybe one of the reasons it was so important to me.
Yeah.
My mum used to play records back in the day when she loved Motown. She played me her Motown
Amazing.
Motown music, and I've still got a lot of her a lot of her Motown records. But I don't know. Yeah, I guess for you, like, you've had a lot of music in the family. Ravi's making music. Your brothers. I forgot about your older brother. Sorry to your older brother.
Yeah.
He's in LA. Obviously, Cher's playing with Gorillaz.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of, like, you guys are all kind of doing music, aren't you?
So my mum was a music teacher, and in fact, her and my dad met. She was studying music in Manchester. My dad was at the University of Manchester. Like, my dad basically learned he got guitar lessons from my mum, and like, he said he actually wanted to learn the guitar, but I think he also just wanted to, like, spend a bit more time with my mum, and it worked because they got married. So it kind of it was completely just ambient in our house. Like, music was one of the things we did just for fun, and like, so my family, we grew up like very, very kind of super Christian, and one of the things we would do every day, like the kind of On Trap family, is we'd get together, like my dad would get his guitar out, and we'd like sing Christian songs together, like as a family. And the cool thing about that was, like, everyone was free to kind of pick harmonies and stuff, so you'd kind of, we were learning about playing music by ear, and, you know, before we could talk, you know, in the case of like the younger siblings, you know, music was just like totally a really basic part of what we did as a family.
Yeah, that Christianity thing's so interesting as well, isn't it? Where I live in East London, in Dalston, there's a huge West African community.
Of course.
And if you go around on Sundays, you can hear the music coming out of the churches because it's so loud and everyone's singing, and there's this real musical spirit. Well, a lot of Western Christian worship is quite quiet, and the West African churches are popping off on Sundays. You hear the music coming out of it.
There are so many musicians who go on to become professionals. Yeah. You cut your teeth playing in the church band, and like your first experience of like having an audition will be trying to get into the church band, and then like every week, like basically a church service is like a gig for you. And like part of what, in the church that I went to when I lived in Nigeria, the service would start with like half an hour of continuous music. So the band would be playing, and the person who was leading the band would just like call out a song, and it's like, all right, we're changing to this song, and like would just kind of like segue like seamlessly from one song to the other. Or, you know, the band leader would call out, all right, we're going to take it up, like we're going to change the key, and, you know, like all these kind of cues to the band. So if you're in the band, you have to be, just like very kind of ready for anything, basically. And my way of getting a bit more serious about music was when I got a little bit older. I like joined the church band, like in our church in Lagos in Nigeria, and eventually like got to be like the person who was like leading the service. And this is when I was I think the first time would have been when I was like 13 or 14, and our church was pretty big. You know, there'd be like 1,000 people there for like a Sunday service, thereabouts, and like it really was the start of me getting the feeling of what it's like to play a gig. Yeah, and that must have been a kind of a mixture of feelings, I imagine. Kind of exhilaration, maybe some fear as well, like learning how to perform. Lots of fear, right? Yeah, because also like you could only rehearse so much. So like we'd have band practice during like a couple of times during the week, but like you'd rehearse the songs in isolation. You wouldn't really rehearse playing that like half an hour mix, essentially. And the thing that's kind of interesting now is thinking about, so I DJ, kind of got into DJing a couple of years after I joined Metronomy, and I've always loved making mixtapes for people, and then like getting into making DJ mixes. It's exactly that thing of like thinking, well, this song would fit with this song, and like, oh, these two songs are in the same key, and like I could take the melody from this song and have it go on top of like the chord progression for this other song, and then like that makes the transition work, and all those same things, like it was all, looking back on it, very much like all there, you know. Yeah, and you've been DJing increasingly around the world as well, haven't you, in recent years? The last gig I had, obviously like COVID, like so many other things about music, like had a big break from it during COVID. Like I just DJ'd in Mexico City. That was a lot of fun. A kind of after show for we had a big Metronomy show there, and it was kind of sort of an after show.
Yeah, that must have been a lot of fun, I imagine.
Yep, it's exactly as you'd expect DJing in Mexico.
Yeah.
People go very hard, and it's like a real, just like the atmosphere is amazing.
Yeah, I've never been. I'm actually going to head there soon, so you have to give me some tips for where to go. I imagine
Food's great.
Yeah, I imagine the food's great,
Yeah.
and I guess if you want to party,
the traffic is terrible though, and like
right.
the weekend we were there was the weekend of the Formula One, the Mexican Grand Prix, and so like the traffic is always bad, but the traffic was extra bad.
Yeah, well, we were talking about Buenos Aires. You guys are playing the show there, aren't you? And I remember going out there, and it was one of the craziest nights ever. I think there's something about South American cities. People really they really like to go quite hard, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires.
It's one of those
big clubbing places.
Stereotypes that really is, it's a stereotype. Obviously, there are nuances to it, but like at its core, it's kind of true. It's just like, people are much more expressive with their passions and just like much more demonstrative, I guess.
Yeah, you guys play a lot of festivals. Back when I was writing a lot about music, I was going to a lot of festivals around the world, and I always enjoyed it so much. And I feel like wherever you go in the world, it's funny because there's obviously there's local bands playing, local DJs, things are different, but then you have this overarching universal language of music, right? People are there from different countries, and they've come to see Metronomy, or they've come to see another band or another DJ, and everyone's there. We live in this globalized world where people can get hold of music from different places, and then they all enjoy it. And I think that's an incredible thing, isn't it, to bring people together, right? Do you ever
Absolutely.
kind of think about that?
I think, I think when you play a lot of festivals, so like this summer we played 30 plus festivals, there's a tendency to sometimes see the similarities as much as you see the differences, but at its core, like it's a really, really cool thing. Like it's a great way to experience like new music. That's the thing I always love about festivals, and like just walking around and kind of taking a look at the lineup, but usually we'll get to a festival, thankfully, these days sometimes we're playing more towards the evening, so you get there in the morning sometimes, and you've got the whole day to walk around and see some band you've just never heard of because you're walking past a tent and you just hear some music kind of wafting out of it, and you kind of go and check it out. Or like an artist so like this summer we've done a few festivals with an artist called Eve Tumor, which I think is a band, but I thought was a solo artist, but I think they're a band. And like I'd never seen them play before, and we found for some reason there were 3 festivals that we were on the same day, like on the same bill as them. So that was quite cool to kind of get to see people that you've heard about but not had a chance to go to a gig. Yeah,
exactly. You can see so many, can't you? We were talking about Primavera just before we started recording, which is one of my all-time favorites. They always book so many cool people. The
lineups are just so good.
The people you really want to see, the people you love, and then you discover new stuff as well.
And it's a city-based festival as well, which I'm very into because I don't really massively like camping / hate camping.
It's easier in the city, isn't it? When you can go back to your hotel and just have a good night's sleep.
Yeah, and
kind of simpler.
I think with Primavera, because it all starts quite late, late by like British standards, I guess. So you basically have the whole day to hang out. So like we played Primavera this past summer, and my brother Shea, who plays with Gorillaz, was there because Gorillaz were playing the same day, or they had played the day before, I can't remember. But we hung out, got some food, went to the cinema to watch the new Top Gun movie.
That sounds like a great day.
Dubbed in Spanish. And then
¿Cómo se dice Top Gun en español? What is that?
I think like all that. So like
Pistol Mejor,
Top Gun, Maverick, all those words. They left them in English, but said with this kind of very, very thick Spanish accents. Honestly, like I don't think I'll ever be able to watch that film in English now. Like it's just not going to sound right.
That must have been a great day.
Yeah.
I guess cool to hang out with Cher as well. I guess maybe you don't get that much time together if you're both on the road.
Not really,
places.
no. I mean, he lives in London, but for a while he was out of London, and like if your touring cycles are out of sync, then it can be a whole year and you've kind of not seen a person who lives kind of not that far away from you.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. We were always saying about festivals as well. I think this the kind of bringing people together, I think is really cool, especially in this kind of fractured. Is that some guns?
I'm guessing those are some guns, but ceremonial guns.
Hopefully ceremonial guns.
Yeah.
This kind of fractured world we live in, as illustrated by the gunfight.
The timing could not be more perfect.
It's good to bring people together, isn't it? And to have that shared universal language as these weird cannons go off. But also I think, when you can discover music from different places, talk about gorillas. I think Damon's been really clever in bringing like African music to the table, where people maybe don't always know that. I think we're seeing more of that, aren't we? We're learning more about South American music, maybe African music.
I mean, I think the thing that's been cool in pop music in the last 10 years or so has been, like the whole Latin, people making pop songs that are on the kind of number one in the charts in kind of English-speaking countries, but they're singing in Spanish or rapping in Spanish, and there's like so much cool like Portuguese music and like Mexican music, and then there's a whole
or even K-pop. There's so much.
K-pop, exactly, and like electronic music in South Africa, like Com and then Amapiano, like those what were kind of like would have been pretty kind of niche regional kind of subgenres of house music and dance music, but because of the internet, you're able to find out about these things much more quickly. I guess the flip side of that is there's always the specter of appropriation and the idea that, if you're a pop artist, you kind of jump on whatever this new wave is, but actually you don't really have that much real interaction with the community it comes from. But pop music has always been kind of vampiric in that way.
Yeah, and you've been doing some stuff, Eki Fantasy as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so like I made an album in an EP with a friend of mine who is actually from the UK, but he's been living in South Africa for my friend Gareth, who produces under the name Jumping Backslash. And like we made this like electronic kind of R&B soul album. And it's been a lot of fun. Like I actually went out to South Africa to this, like he lives in this small town on the Garden route called Knysna. So I kind of we hung out in Cape Town a bit, like we did a DJ gig in Johannesburg, but most of the time that I've been there, I've actually been hanging out in Knysna, which is just like, it's just like a really super regular town, and that's been quite cool too.
Yeah. Maybe he's in amongst the South African dignitaries.
Here are the South African delegates.
Listening to those guns going off in the background, which sound quite weird. We'll wrap it up in a minute, Gbenga. But there was one other thing I wanted to ask you about. I read about you and Cher doing a graphic novel. Talk to us about that. That sounds really interesting.
So during lockdown, I had this idea of collaborating on something with Cher because we've made music together kind of on and off over the years.
You've done songs as well, haven't you?
Yeah, but we've never really like worked on something in depth. And at the time, even though the kind of everyone was doing stuff remotely, I wasn't really that up for like trading files with him back and forth and kind of working that way, because I'm much more used to, I guess, just being in a room with him, and my default, like, number one kind of preferred way of working with people is being in a room with them. But I had this short story idea, and at the time I didn't know it, but he'd been approached by Doc Martens they have this thing called Doc Martens Presents, and they wanted to do something with him. And so he had this idea of like us working on this short story. It's kind of like a longish, not quite novella length, but it's like a longish short story, and then we got a bunch of illustrators, mostly kind of people of color, to work on like illustrating it. It kind of came out. So it's called Obalende Sector. It's set in this alternate version of the world where colonialism basically never happened, and like European countries continued to trade with Africa, but never colonized any of the countries. So where we're from, Nigeria, is actually made up of a bunch of what used to be separate countries, and it was kind of arbitrarily, these lines were drawn around it, and it's like, all right, you're all part of the same country now.
Yeah.
So in this
good old British Empire.
In this world of the story, Yorubaland, which is the bit of Nigeria that we're from, Yorubaland is separate from the Igbos. The Igbos have their own kingdom next to it, and then like the Hausas have their own kingdom to the north of it, which is like broadly what the separation was before colonialism. There's a lot more nuance to it than that, but yeah, so it's cool, and you can read it online if you just like search Obalende Sector. Like it's a really fun thing. Like we are working on more stories, but then we got busy, touring. And there's kind of a sci-fi element to that, right? Very much so, yeah.
Like
Asimov, that's the other thing.
Dick
so Shay and I are both big sci-fi people. Like Philip K. Dick particularly is like a huge touchstone for us. And also like Sandman, like we love kind of comics and graphic novels too. It was nice to kind of work on something that wasn't music, but still drew on our kind of shared influences and stuff we kind of grew up reading and watching.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I love sci-fi so much when I was a kid. I think everyone does, don't they? When you're little, you love those. You love comics. I
don't know. See, the interesting thing is, like, you don't think of Saturday morning cartoons as sci-fi, even though often, like if you're watching Transformers or Power Rangers or whatever,
Thundercats.
Yeah, they're like set on other planets or set in the future or, involve, teleportation, time travel, whatever. But all of a sudden it's like you get older and you say, oh, I'm into Star Trek. And people are like, oh, so you're a nerd. Like, well, or up till recently, the whole Marvel cinematic universe has changed it. But it used to be, if you said like, I'm into comics, people would be like, oh, you're a nerd.
Yeah.
I'm gonna like beat you up and take your lunch money. But somehow it's kind of become cool.
It's become cool, hasn't it? Yeah, it wasn't cool when I was young. I mean, I definitely am a nerd. I get the feeling you probably are as well.
100%. Guilty as charged.
Yeah, I think we both are. But that stuff's become cool now. It's strange, isn't it? But those things are all. When you're a kid, I think anything that's kind of dreamy or fantastical is always grabs your imagination, doesn't it? Does Ravi like that stuff as well?
He does. So he's a nerd. Yeah, he likes.
Obviously, because his dad is. So he would be, wouldn't he?
Well, his mum is too. This
and
Bethany
is. As
my
well,
wife and I are. We've been rewatching Star Wars. Rewatching Star Trek from the beginnings. Like we watched Star Trek: The Next Generation. Yeah. And we're now watching Star Trek: Deep Space Nine. And like we're kind of, as a household, anything to do with kind of like space and fantasy and stuff like that, we're super into.
Yeah, so. You should play a Metronomy gig in space. How about that?
It's kind of like
get Elon Musk on the phone.
Kula Shaker wanted to be the first band to play on the moon, right?
Yeah. I'm glad that didn't happen. I think we'd all prefer a Metronomy gig on the moon. Okay, Gbenga, thank you so much for talking to me today. I hope you've enjoyed a slightly surreal. I wasn't expecting a very nice, quiet, like get a coffee, sit in the park. It's been quite intense with guns going off and men with swords on horses.
Very 2022, I think.
Yeah, exactly. You never know what's gonna happen. Right, let's walk back to the station. But thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you, man.
And
pleasure.
Yeah, I hope everything goes well with Ravi's single. Just before we go, where can people get Ravi's single?
So if you go to ravisdream.com, so RAVISDREAM.com, you can watch the video. There's a donate button. I know it's kind of, it's tough times for people, but if you have a couple of spare quid, you could donate. That'd be awesome. But yeah, ravisdream.com.
Ravisdream.com. Gbenga Adelekan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, man.
I hope you enjoyed enjoyed that episode of Park Date. There's lots more where that came from, and there'll be more in the future as well. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review, good or bad, make them funny. I'll be reading out the best ones, and there'll be a prize for the one that makes me laugh the most. Name check some trees in your reviews and leave them wherever you get your podcasts from. Check out our website, parkdate.co.uk, and if you see me walking around in a park, come and say hello. I think that was the sound of someone sneezing. Yes. Thank you. Bye-bye. Coming up on the next edition of Park Date, Chef Rexton Wallet invites us into his kitchen, where he tells us about the things he likes to open and close the most.
I like to open and close the fridge, the cupboards, this cupboard, that cupboard, this cupboard, cupboard with the crisps in, open and close the oven like this, rattle around all the stuff, put the kettle on, and then, maybe I'll pour myself a whiskey.